if you are a Nebraska fan, you must be asking, what more can I do? What else do you need from me to get a 6th win in any season since 2016? I feel for Nebraska fans on this one because this 28-20 loss to USC feels personal. Feels personal as Matt Rule has once again tried to pull out all the stops. He took the play calling privileges from Marcus Satterfield. He handed them to Dana Holgorsen. He had acknowledged what many had acknowledged too. They run far too many bubble screens. They are not good at moving the football down the field vertically, and they haven't scored enough points. Just averaging 18.3 points per game. And after getting off to a 5-1 start, we had seen Nebraska be a top 25 team. We thought that perhaps Nebraska was going to have a breakthrough season a year ahead of schedule in as far as Matt Rule is concerned. And if you are Nebraska and you see what's going on in Indiana, you're going, why is that happening to them and not us? We have a star at quarterback in Dylan Raiola. We have what we think is an outstanding defense that Tony White has put on the field. And yet we got beat down by Indiana and we have not recovered since. Then you go on the road to USC. In the Big Ten in particular, it has been difficult for programs to cross multiple time zones and win football games. It is stark, the difference between those that have to travel and those who do not have to travel. And with Nebraska and USC, you're seeing two programs that up until the last decade had more or less had a national champion and or a Heisman Trophy winner between them at least once, right, throughout that. Pete Carroll's years at SC, we could talk about, my goodness, those 90s Nebraska teams, to say nothing to 80s Nebraska's team. In this game, they're honoring the 1972 national champion USC Trojans that got to be national champs because Nebraska started out as number 1. They lost to UCLA, and it goes the way it goes. But between Tom Osborne and Pete Carroll and John Mackey and John McKay and John Robinson, you thought that perhaps Matt Rule and Lincoln Riley would be able to put up something that was pretty cool. And you know what? For the most part, it was. It came down to the last play of the game. 28-20, you're in the red zone. You have an opportunity to go get 6. Dylan Raiola threw a pick that, felt inevitable the way that the game was going. But you got some really great play out of Corey Barney. You got some great play out of Sierra Wright, who got pick 6 in his return to his native L.A., and then you knew that you had a new quarterback in Jaden Mayava. You knew that you were going to get an opportunity to go after a guy that hadn't played a bunch of football this year, and he still went 24-35 for 260, and you still gave up 185 on the ground, 146 to Woody Marks, who's turned out to be one of the better tailbacks on one of the mediocre teams in football. But once again, it's more psychological for Nebraska at this point than anything else. For SC, you get back on the good foot, right? You have an opportunity to get to bowl eligibility, which is a far cry from what you wanted to be as you were expected to be a top 25 team and be punching for one of these college football playoff spots in the first year of the 12-team format. For Nebraska, I'm not sure what else you can ask to do for Matt Rule because, again, it's not as if you want to move off of Matt Rule, but you got to do something with this offense. And I thought getting Dana Holgorsen involved in the play calling might change the play calling, and it did to some degree. But it was clear to me what Dana Holgorsen was working with, which is not as much of the playbook as I'm sure he would have wanted because it's not his playbook, right? He is having to call plays out of an offense that has been installed by Marcus Satterfield, which on its face doesn't feel like a great thing. But I think this might lead you toward allowing Dana to install more of his own stuff and or melding the offense into something he knows how to use because I thought that in getting to see Barney, I got to see a player that reminds me a lot of Tavon Austin, the kind of player that he would build around to make this thing go. I'm thinking about Noel Devine way back in the day, too, with Rich Rodriguez and Steve Slayton in West Virginia. But then what Justin Blackman allowed for him to do as a play caller at Oklahoma State and the kind of background he has in the air raid, which you could see moving people right to left and up and down, right, stretching the field as far as it can be. That's one thing that the air raid does. But the air raid was my offense in high school. It's my favorite offense, because it took advantage of mismatches, and if I had shorter, slower guys on the offensive line and at wide receiver, it didn't matter because I'm going to get the ball out of my hands quickly, and I'm going to throw the ball to open field and open grass, and in doing so, I'm also going to facilitate plays to the best player on the football field for me every single time. It's why Michael Crabtree was able to have his year in 2008. It's why Justin Blackman was so great for Dana Holgorsen. It's why Tavon Austin ended up being so great for Dana Holgorsen. You're going to identify your playmakers, and you're going to feed them the rock. This is what Mark Whipple did really well at Pittsburgh with Jordan Addison. This is what we thought he was going to do at Nebraska when he got there. For whatever reason, getting to Nebraska has been a setback for many play callers. I'm trying to remember the last great play caller to come through Nebraska, and it's been some time on that offensive side of the ball. Tony White's doing a good enough job defensively. I know that there are a lot of Nebraska fans that feel that Bo Pelini had them going in the right direction before he got the rug pulled out from under him. I think that Mike Riley was a pretty damn good head coach and had them in a great way, but again, we're looking at what you can do for this offense. So while Dana Holgorsen might be your guy going into 2025, who knows, he's going to get to finish the season as the play caller, I'm not at all certain that that is the direction that Matt Rule wants to go. I think at this point, you need someone not unlike Dana Holgorsen, but much more like Lincoln Riley across. Whoever the next up-and-coming play caller is in football, that's where your eyes need to go. Who is doing some outstanding stuff? Like, people are talking about Brennan Marion at Oklahoma, talking about Brennan Marion at Florida State. I think Brennan Marion would be a great fit for a place like Nebraska. You bring the go-go offense in, you allow him to install it, and you basically make this into the kind of offense that is friendly to Dylan Raiola, who has a big arm, who is conservative with how he's going to throw the ball down the field. He doesn't really make that many mistakes, though he's made a few, and you need to protect him a little bit more. I, if nothing else, thought that this was going to be the game where Nebraska had its breakthrough, but now we're talking about 9 consecutive games for which Nebraska has been looking to get bowl eligible with just one win going back to last year, and they cannot do it. And it feels like this was them slipping even further back in the Big Ten at a time when they could have at least established with the newcomer in USC that, no, we've been here, we've been in this conference longer than you have, and we are going to assert that level of control in this game. And it felt like that was on the offing. But from the jump, you're seeing some of these play calls, and you're seeing the players that they have out there, and I had questions about why the ball was going to anybody other than Barney and Fedoni. And I also had questions about why you just didn't bring up 6 or 7 in the box to try to stop the run, because it was very clear that if USC could run the football on Nebraska, cancel Christmas, it's done. Because then Jaden Mayava gets to go. But what Jaden Mayava was able to provide that Miller Moss wasn't was that ability to run the zone read. His athleticism, his mobility did what Lincoln Riley expected it to do. It gave them another option, another set of legs, another player that was unblocked at the line of scrimmage. And you know what? On a 4th and gotta have it, he chose to go with an option play, and it was the right play. And they went and they got an explosive play out of a 4th and short. And then eventually he punches it in for what ends up being the touchdown that really puts the game out of reach. It was 21-20, ends up being 28-20. If nothing else, Nebraska is still right back where we thought they were, so they're not falling any further back as far as being bowl eligible. But psychologically, you got to believe that this has to come to an end at some point. And as a outside observer of Nebraska football who enjoys Nebraska football, I would love for you to get better quicker, and I would love for you to make bowl this season. But my goodness, man, this one just has to hurt.